Next level. Next level.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's time for the Thursday evening Tech Talk Hangout. My name's Mike. I'm with Go Cell Phone Repair. And before I forget, please, if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit the like button down there, wherever that thing is. You'll find links to all the information I'll be talking about during the live stream down underneath the video as well. So if you want to read these articles, don't have to take my word for everything. You can check those out too. But the liking and the sharing certainly helps me out a lot. So tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff, but a few of the things on the agenda. We have issues with the iPhone 8. Your handset may be affected. If it is, you can go back to Apple and get something. I really don't know if it's repair, replacement, what they're going to do exactly, but there are some catches to that. I'll tell you how to figure out if you need to take your phone in for repair. The iPhone 9 XS and XS Plus pre-orders have already launched in Romania. Huawei caught cheating on benchmark tests. Why? I don't know. The Pixel 3 expected at a New York event, or expected to be announced at a New York event on October 9th. ISPs already caught throttling Netflix and YouTube, and we kind of knew this was going to happen. I mean, no more protection from net neutrality, so a slow transition into internet hell for the most part. Hopefully we can stop that from happening one way or another. And Twitter has outright completely banned Alex Jones and InfoWars, and while that may not necessarily be a terrible thing, it does imply a lot of other things going forward as we look at the way that social media is being treated, by private companies that own that. Anyways, we'll get to all this and more in just a second. All right, friends, let's talk tech. Hey, good to see you all here. Hawaii Sidecar, haven't been around for a while. Glad you could make it. Tangy Sponge Sauce and Greg M, thanks for joining. I want to get into this part right off the bat because this is something that anyone out there, if you have an iPhone 8, and of course, if you work on iPhones, you should be aware this is going on. Apple has come forward and said, yeah, we've got some problems, and it affects a whole bunch of things on the iPhone. Specifically the processor, which is a big deal, right? The the wireless chip and the memory. So this is all really important stuff. So if you have an iPhone 8, I'll get right to it. If you go to the Apple website, and of course this link is down in the video description as well, you can type in your serial number and determine whether or not you have one of these handsets that needs to be swapped out. Now, if you look over here on the left, there is a drop down that you want to make sure you click on and select the correct company. Now, supposedly, it is a very small number of handsets that are affected. It does not include the Plus series, so it's just the standard iPhone 8. And the question really is, number one, how is Apple going to treat this in the store? They are most likely not going to swap out your logic board. I would suspect that they're going to take your phone and replace it with another handset, which may or may not be new. It might be refurbished. I really don't know. They don't give you all the details here on the website, so I'll be interested to hear what that means exactly. Now, the downside of this, of course, is that Apple has also stated that if your iPhone 8 has any damage that could impair the ability to complete the repair, such as a cracked screen, you will have to fix it before Apple will change the defective logic board. And in this article, they do say that the logic board is being changed out. Again, I haven't confirmed that. It would surprise me if any of the techs at the Apple stores were being told to swap out a logic board, but maybe that's how they're treating it. In any case, this is going to be a problem for a lot of people because, as we know, there are many users out there who say, hey, I've got a small crack, a chip, a dent, whatever in my phone. I don't really think that it's worth fixing right now. I'm going to walk around with this, and if you want to have your phone repaired, you have to pay for that as well, according to the article and according to everything that I've seen from Apple so far. So that's kind of a downer. It's understandable that they don't want to give you a handset that already has an existing problem and send it back out into the wild. And of course, when you go to remove a cracked screen, other things can go wrong. So that part of it we understand. At the same time, we've had historically other handsets that were prone to other types of damage by nature. Specifically the iPhone 6, the iPhone 6 Plus. We know that those phones were easily bent. And at that time, when we went to get them repaired at Apple, we were often told, sorry, this phone does not meet our specifications in order to be put back out as a repaired model. So we can't even change the screen out for you, or we can't change out the home button or whatever it is. And then you are, in fact, on the hook for a lot more money than you thought initially. So I think it's a good idea for Apple, especially with their track record of not really acknowledging that there are problems with their products, and also going as far as to kind of, mislead customers. When we look at the iPhone 6s battery situation, they weren't really, transparent about what was going on there. They kind of tried, many would say, to hide what the real problem was. And once they got caught by one of these benchmark tests, they said, okay, yes, there is something going on. There is such a thing as throttling. And now we're going to give you a discounted battery, which is, kind of like putting a Band-Aid on an open sore. At the same time, we should maybe give them credit for at least being smart enough to say, yes, there is a problem, it needs to be fixed, rather than just trying to sweep this under the rug like a lot of other situations in the past. So where do you stand if you have this iPhone 8? I guess you go into the store and ask them, number one, if this is an affected handset, are you going to repair it? Are you going to give me a new logic board? Or are you going to give me a refurbished logic board? Or are you going to give me a refurbished phone? What exactly am I getting? How will this affect my warranty going forward? I would want to have this information in writing before I swapped anything out there. And in addition to that, are you going to charge me for any other, any repairs in this process? Are you going to tell me that I need to pay for something to be fixed before you perform this recall process, as it is for the most part, where, you take a look at anything else, and the first thing that typically comes to mind is automobiles. If there's a safety recall on a vehicle, they have to fix it. There's no, sorry, you got a couple dents in the frame, or, the windshield's cracked, or there's anything else. It's kind of like, okay, we messed up. We have to fix it. So I kind of feel like this is a halfway, we'll meet you halfway there. We'll fix the problem, but we need to make sure you didn't start, you didn't cause any other problems beyond that, which seems, a little questionable. Oh, let's get the chat here on the screen, because I will most likely edit this video later on, and all that stuff will disappear. So I want people to be able to see what the comments are. And come over here real quick. Hey, Oscar, good to see you again. Johnny Chang, Greg M. Yeah, so everyone's here. The whole crew's here tonight. It was the real great Helm chairman Mao Zedong that said it once a lie repeated a million times got to be true sometimes. Yeah, we'll talk about something along those lines pretty soon also. Damage that would affect resale value after they swap phones? Probably, yes. It would be easier to replace with a refurb, and I strongly suspect, and maybe someone will tell me different if you've gone through this process, but I would strongly suspect you're right, Hawaii, that Apple's not going to have their techs tear open a phone and replace a logic board, swap them back and forth. I assume that they want to have the process just be fast, get you in the store, get you out, you're taken care of, nobody's lingering around talking about how this is, a mistake that Apple made. So I would think that's the way they're going to go about it. And again, my question is, what kind of warranty do you get on this swapped out phone? And what's the history of that refurbished unit? You really don't know what it's been through. What are you getting? Are you getting a phone that was lightly, obviously it came back for some reason in the first place, right? That's my main concern. Does any of the second-rate iPhone parts sell in China end up in the official distribution channels again? I would think so, Johnny. I would think so, because we have a lot of refurbished handsets here in the stores that are being swapped out, and to my knowledge, Apple isn't doing any sort of high-level repair here in the States. I think that is all outsourced overseas, so more than likely that's coming from China. I don't know for a fact, so obviously I'm just saying what I think here, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense if Apple was doing board level repairs here in the States. I think that we would know about that. For Apple to improve the quality of their products, they got to make a military contract to start selling military grade gadgets. Yeah, maybe. Hey, what's up, John Cassidy? So there's something about this article that I also wanted to just kind of touch on briefly. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about this evening. I've got some announcements to make that I hope you'll be excited about as I am. But I want to get through this first article here. And this author, the person that wrote this, I think his name is Jean or Jean. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, so forgive me if I get it wrong. I believe it's Jean because it's Jean. But how much? Any questions? If Apple is going to make people fix their screens. His argument is, Apple shouldn't be making people fix something on their phone when it comes in for a recall, kind of the same opinion I have, but the reasons that he gives for it I think are a little different, and I question this and whether it makes a lot of sense or not. What he says is that if someone goes in with a broken screen to get their phone, repaired or whatever it is that they're going to do to it, why doesn't Apple just eat that cost and say, you know what, we're going to fix the screen for you and fix the problem that's wrong with your phone? And I'm not sure that would be a terrible idea, but I question the reason behind why he says that. And in the article, he says, how much would that really cost the most valuable company in the world? And I think that this is kind of where things get twisted. It seems like it would make sense for any company in the world, whether it's the most valuable or not, to do the right thing, to do what is proper when it comes to treating their customers to what they really deserve, for what they got for their money. I think that you're entitled to that regardless of how much the company you're dealing with is worth. And this is one of the things that just really gets me. There's this mentality that, well, if someone has a lot of money, they should be giving me some of that. This company makes a lot of money. They should be paying for extra stuff. Well, maybe they should. Maybe it would be nice of them to do that, but I don't think that we're really justified to tell people how to run their businesses. The bottom line really is if you don't like the way they do business, you probably shouldn't do business with them. They don't really have a monopoly at this point, although, it will kind of seem that way. So I think it might be in Apple's best interest to give people a little credit, as far as the broken screen. They certainly, in my opinion, should have replaced the batteries when we had the whole scandal with the iPhone 6s. But again, I don't think they should do it because they have a lot of money. I think that they should do that because they messed up, they misled their customers, they caused these batteries to have problems. Fix the problem regardless of how much money you have in your bank account. That's just my philosophy. So anyways, we'll see what happens with this. I'll be really curious to hear if anyone has their phone swapped out or fixed or whatever. If you have an iPhone 8, which seems unlikely, there don't seem to be a lot of iPhone 8s out there. We see a lot of the 10s and we see a lot of the 8 Pluses, not so many on the 8s. It seems like a lot of people who wanted the larger screen got the 8 Plus, and people who were fine with the smaller screen went with the 10 for whatever reasons. Just kind of seems that way. Dave says, Dave Hammerton, how you doing? Apple equals planned obsolescence. I agree with you 100%, and they're not the only ones, but they're certainly one of the most prolific, and we see a lot of that, unfortunately, nowadays. So, next up, we have the iPhone 9, the iPhone XS, and the iPhone XS Plus. Pre-orders launched by a Romanian carrier ahead of Apple's big event. Not a huge shocker. This information is often available to wireless carriers and dealers before they're actually launched, because they've got to kind of strategize and decide how they're going to market their product, and they're supposed to have signage in, and they need to have accessories ready to go day one. So this isn't a huge surprise. I don't know why specifically it happened in Romania. Maybe it has something to do with the way businesses conduct over there. I really don't know the answer to why that was launched early over there, but we kind of got an idea of what pretty much is going to confirm a lot of the leaks that we've heard about the iPhone 9, the iPhone XS or 10s. I really don't know. What do you call that? The iPhone XS Plus? The iPhone 10s Plus? I'm at a loss here, and possibly they may actually be calling the XS the Max, or the Max Plus, or the XS Max. I don't know. The Maxi Pad, maybe. It really seems like Apple struggles a bit with the whole naming of their devices. They don't tend to be very creative when it comes to that. We have a numbering system, we have iPhone, we have iPad, and that's it. So take it or leave it. So it's interesting. I kind of thought that maybe after the X or the 10 or whatever you prefer came out, they might switch to something that was, I don't know, a little more colorful, had a little more character to it, but it sounds like we'll be looking at a 9 and an XS or a 10S or whatever you prefer. Available in black and white, and the 9, let's see if we got a little bit of information, not a whole lot, but they're talking about, let's see, can we open these up? Can we show them on screen? Yes, we can. So they're showing an iPhone XS. I'm going to call it the XS because 10S just sounds silly to me, although I think the proper name is 10. 256 gigs LTE, and then we have on the same page a 64 gig LTE, and then here we have a bunch of them. The XS Max Plus 512, the XS Max Plus 256, and the 9, again, 64 gig. So, not a ton of information, but for the most part, nothing too outrageously different from what we have already seen leak in the first place. Let's see. Romania is not the wealthiest country in Europe. I wonder, Johnny, if that has anything to do with their carriers, launching this early or not. It might have something to do with it. White Sidecar, I'm listening to you while I do an S7 total rebuild. Second one today. Hey, good for you, man. Have fun. So, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the iPhone launch. September 12th, so we've got, another week roughly before the next generation of iPhone comes out. I think we have a pretty good idea of what to expect. It sounds like they will be doing away with the 3D Touch and going all in on Face ID, which is really a surprise to me. I suspect that there are quite a few people out there who want to stick with their home button and or Touch ID, basically because they've gotten used to it. But at the same time, I've heard a lot of arguments for why having to stick a phone in front of your face to unlock it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm really surprised that they're going with this for the time being. There's also a lot of talk about Apple going to USB-C Lightning, so you can get ready to throw away all of your old Lightning cables because they probably won't be compatible with any of the next generation iPhones, which also is not a big surprise. This is traditionally how Apple rolls. You know, we had the 30-pin connector up until just a few years ago. Now they'll be switching out again, and who knows what's going to happen next. But for the most part, don't get too attached to your accessories if you have an iPhone. And somebody else even said that they would eventually do away with what was it? It wasn't the camera. Oh, with the charging port altogether. So, you know, considering what they did with the headphone jack and saying, look, it is 2018 or 2017. You don't need, or 2016? It was 2016, right? The iPhone 7. So you don't need a headphone jack. Get wireless or get a dongle. And there's even been talk about Apple completely doing away with charging cables so that everyone can throw out their old chargers and just buy a wireless charger, and that'll be the next thing. I don't know. Doesn't seem logical, but it wouldn't be a huge surprise. You know, Apple has reached a point of saturation where I think they really have to come up with ideas on how to make more money, and telling people that they not only need to get a new phone, but also need to get all new accessories to go with that phone would be a way to generate a lot of revenue. And again, you know, like I said, it wouldn't be a big shocker. Pixel 2 sensor, fingerprint sensor is fast and easy. They got the next flagship X to the power of 2, and next year one Vin Diesel XXX. Okay, even better than my S9 Plus. Cool. And I wanted to say something about the Pixel 3, but that will be up in just a second. First of all, I thought this was kind of interesting. Huawei has been caught cheating benchmark tests. Apparently, they're not the only ones, but the interesting thing here is that they are not denying it. They are doubling down. They're saying, yes, we absolutely did cheat on benchmark tests, allegedly, according to this article. I should say that all the time. Claiming they're just trying to keep up with all the other cheaters. So, you know, if your competition is cheating, apparently, according to Huawei's philosophy, you need to cheat also, otherwise you just can't compete. So there's an application out there called Weehee, and it's basically the same app that was used to figure out that Apple was throttling the iPhone 6 processor speed because of the battery lifespan. So they got a bunch of users together and did the same thing with a whole lot of Android phones, and they found out that Huawei was among a number of companies that were saying that their phones were a lot faster than they actually were, and in the process found out that Huawei does have a benchmark detection tool on the P20 Honor Play and possibly other devices with the Kirin 970 processor. The tool raises the power limit of the processor, meaning it can perform better under benchmarking tests. So this is a bit like the auto manufacturers who are saying that your car can get up to X miles a gallon. Well, obviously, if you're going downhill and you've got a good tailwind, you can expect to get up to, you know, one passenger in the car and nothing in the trunk. You can get up to this amount of mileage. And while we've seen a few manufacturers in Europe, you know, basically get caught red-handed doing that and going far beyond what they should as far as making claims, it looks like there are plenty of people in the phone arena doing the same thing. And the big question, I think, here is why? Like, we have probably, if anywhere, on this channel, we probably have a higher percentage of people who even care about processor speed and statistics when it comes to buying a phone. I mean, if you talk to the average person on the street, they're not going to say, oh, this phone has a 635 processor and that's the reason I'm not going to buy it. You know, it's usually, I want my phone to work, I want to have these features built in, I want a good battery lifespan, which nobody seems to be able to come up with a solution for that question. Not too many people putting specs side by side, again, outside of this audience. I think that people who are very interested in technology and wanting to be on the cutting edge, like a lot of us here, or deal with this stuff on a daily basis, we want to know what those details are. But the average consumer doesn't seem to be as concerned. And it's interesting because I scrolled down here and the top comment in this article is, does anyone still care about benchmarks? Haven't used a slow top end phone for a few years now. And this is another good point. Most flagship phones, most phones in general, you know, unless you buy a real low-end budget phone, for the most part, they perform pretty well. The cameras look pretty decent. I mean, there are some that are better than others if you want to get that extra edge, you know, get that extra 2 megapixels or whatever it is. But outside of the battle amongst manufacturers to determine who has the fastest speed and the best camera and the shortest charging time and so forth, I don't think a lot of the general public uses that as a huge factor in determining what they're going to buy next. A lot of it has to do with brand name. A lot of it has to do with price point. Outside of that, color might even be the third most important factor when it comes to the average consumer buying a handset. That's my take on it. Let's see. Where did we go? I think a real world review. I think all fingerprint scanners are perfect. What really matters is how long it takes for your phone to turn on when you touch the sensor. Reading it happens in milliseconds. I have to say, that's a good point. And something interesting that has been happening, I don't know why. I have the 8 Plus, and when I go to share, when I look through these articles, when I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep and I'm reading tech stuff, I share these articles through a text message. So I just hit the share button up in the top of the browser and I send myself a text message, and sometimes I'll tweet it if I think it's something other people might want to see, right away. And my phone takes a good 25 to 30 seconds for that message to send in the first place. So it says share, I click on my phone number, I hit send, and nothing happens for almost half a minute. And I have no idea why that's going on. But I also noticed last night that when I sent a text message from the native text app in my iPhone to myself, it took almost 25 minutes for the text message to go through. I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it certainly wasn't like that when it was brand new. Antutu benchmark have been cheated since long ago. And I think that the one that they used was this Weehi, but there's another one called Anand, I believe, they used for testing this. But in any case, if you focus on and you go as far to basically lie about how fast your processor is that really going to make a difference in your market share and getting people to purchase your handset? I have no idea. Real quick, folks, I forgot. I was going to do this at the beginning of the stream, but I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to do it at the end. I wanted to first of all make a couple announcements, and then I want to ask your opinion. So just a quick break from this. We'll come back to the new stuff in just a second. But number one, I am excited. We are going to do a very special live stream on the 20th of this month. It will be at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time rather than 6 o'clock. So it's going to be an hour and a half later than usual. I'm sorry for anyone if that messes up, if you're not able to come for that, because I know a lot of you are on the East Coast or in other locations where that's not as convenient. I try to stay consistent with the timing, but it's the only way this is going to happen. The cool thing is, we are going to do something a little different. We're going to go off topic. We are going to be talking about some conspiracy theory content, which I've got some feedback from a lot of people in the stream, and it seems like an interesting area to go into that a lot of people want to talk about. So we are definitely doing that. Not only are we going to go off topic and talk about some crazy ideas, I am going to be joined by none other than Nate from Nate Tech Services. So you've seen him in the chat. A lot of you know who he is. He will be joining me. We'll be doing a Google Hangout together to talk about conspiracy stuff. I will announce the topic in the next couple of days. We haven't really decided for sure what we want to start off with, but we're going to take a good hour to talk about conspiracy stuff. I don't even know if we'll be able to get beyond one topic, but I think it's going to be a fun, interesting live stream that I hope all of you can join us for. And if you can't, of course, you can always watch the replay later on. But the comments are half the fun here. So for anyone who can join, I would encourage you to do so. If you have ideas about interesting topics that you think that we should consider discussing, please put them in the comments or put them down below the video description here, put them down in the comment section, put them in the chat, put them somewhere where I can see them. Just let me know, give me a holler, and we'll try to include that as well. Also, in the next few weeks, we are going to have an attorney who specializes in litigation as it pertains to technology. So we talked about this also a couple weeks ago, getting someone on here who really knows more about the law. Definitely not me. A lot of things that I say are based on what I read, and I certainly didn't go to school or educate myself when it comes to litigation or patents or trademarks or any of that kind of stuff. Well, we found someone who is he's willing to join us. We're going to be talking about laws as they pertain to technology. So if you have questions or ideas for topics, again, please put them in the video description or in the chat, and I'll be sure to run that stuff by him before he comes on so that he kind of has an idea as what to expect. Okay. So, can you invite the 8-bit guy to your live streams? Absolutely, Johnny. I will invite anyone who you recommend so far. In fact, most of you guys, anyone who's come up with an idea for guests, they've all been good recommendations. So I will absolutely invite him. Whether he comes on or not, that's obviously up to him. But if you want to shoot him a message and say, hey, you should get on this live stream, could you be a great guest? I certainly would not be opposed to that either. But I'll be happy to shoot him an email. And I'm finding that a lot of people now operate on Twitter and Facebook and not so much email. So I think I'm going to start approaching people through different channels because I don't always get a response from them. And I think that's because, email nowadays, if their email box looks like mine, they probably don't have the time to skim through and try to figure out what's spam and what's not. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Where are we? I recommend inviting me. Oh, hey, man. Hawaii, let me know when you're available. If you can make it happen, we'll do it. I can be somewhat flexible here as far as time zones go, because I know that you're, 2 hours behind, I think. So what are you, like 4:30 right now? I am an expert in absolutely nothing. Perfect. Hey, if you really want to come on, hit me up. Let me know, and we'll come up with some things to talk about that you obviously know about phone repair, so we can start there. A lawyer in your live stream will give you a lot of red tape regarding legally correct speeches. I would be happy to have a lawyer tell me if I'm doing something that's wrong here, which I don't suspect that legally I am, but I often question whether or not Google's going to be happy about the subject matter that's here. And at the same time, I really think that we have to say, we got to let people talk. I'm going to get to that towards the end of the stream too. That's actually a topic that I wanted to go into later. Well, Hawaii, 3:30. Let me know if there's a good time for you. Like I said, I can be somewhat flexible. I don't want to go too late on our time because then basically everyone on the mainland is asleep, and we want to have participants in the chat. But your live stream is in no danger. Good to hear. I hope not. All right, so Netflix and YouTube are the most throttled apps by U.S. carriers, a new study says. So we knew this was coming. We've all been aware of the death of net neutrality since December of last year. We know that the FCC and other organizations, basically big cable companies, have been trying to get rid of this for a while because they want to do business the way they want to do what they want to do. They don't want to be regulated, and they even want regulations saying that they can't be regulated. So figure that one out. But in any case, as I suspected, Netflix and YouTube, which are two of the most popular streaming apps that there are the first to be affected by this, and it's unfortunate. According to new research from a group of researchers. Okay, I didn't write that; somebody else did. At Northeastern University and the University of Massachusetts, the findings of which were published first by Bloomberg today, reveals the extent to which companies like AT&T and Verizon have taken advantage of lax government regulation under President Donald Trump to limit data speeds for customers. Again, not a big surprise. We have a pro-business administration and a Congress that is afraid to lose their job. So a lot of people aren't speaking out against things that may not be in the best interest of the American public. Hopefully that makes sense and doesn't sound biased. This really seems to be what's happening. The research was conducted by getting around 100,000 people to sign up for a mobile app called Wehi. Wehi again. Maybe I was wrong on the other app on the phone. That might have been something different. Which monitored network traffic for participating users to determine when an app experienced what they call differentiation. AT&T and Verizon were by far the most egregious throttlers, differentiating delivery speeds for streaming video 8,398 and 11,100 times respectively. T-Mobile and Sprint differentiated traffic 3,900 times and 339 respectively. So it's nice that they've got some different words that sound a lot more acceptable than throttling. No, you're not being throttled. We're using differentiation. And there's another term that they use in here. I think it's called network management. So there's no throttling going on, but if your Netflix doesn't stream smoothly, or if YouTube starts buffering and you can't get it to play right, that's because of network management and differentiation. So get used to hearing these terms. U.S. carriers are slowing the delivery of speed of the data based on the type of data it is. And this is the real problem, and also apparently where the data is coming from. A violation of one of the pillars of modern net neutrality principles, which you don't have to worry about anymore because we don't have net neutrality. So the laws that protected us from this happening are gone. So they can pretty much do whatever they want to. As I predicted, it's not going to be a sudden transition into now you have to pay extra for Netflix and YouTube if you want to watch them. But little by little, we should expect to see the erosion of the services that we have come to take for granted because they are no longer something that we have access to without what's the word I want to use? Without discrimination. You know, it is now up to your ISP, whether it's your cable company or your wireless carrier, to decide what you get full speed on. You know, do you get full speed for streaming video from this source or for this source, or for playing games online? You know, that's up to us, and we'll decide if you have to pay extra for it, but we're not going to ram it down your throat just yet. We're going to use network management and differentiation to help the network out so that everybody's running nice and smooth and you're happy and it's all in your best interest. So your money is well spent. And meanwhile, we want a little extra money from the federal government to help us build out our networks. So while we don't want to be regulated, we do need those federal funds to come from the taxpayers so that we can fund our private company to build up our network. Which is that money actually going to go into the network? That remains to be seen. Questionable, I would say. So let me not get too far off track here, though. Where were we? Yeah, so down here it explains network management, terms like prioritization and differentiation. And right now, most unlimited data plans from U.S. carriers will throttle all traffic since you exceed a certain number of gigabytes used, typically around 22 gigs or 25 gigs. We've also known for a long time that unlimited does not mean that there is not a limit. So we've taken a word out of the dictionary and changed its meaning to suit large corporations so that they can call things by a name that's attractive to customers but doesn't really meet the definition or meet the expectation that a person has. If you saw this at the beginning of the stream, you know, if you go and look at an unlimited plan at some carriers, you'll get to choose from Go Unlimited, Beyond Unlimited. I don't know what, you know, if there's an unlimited, what does Beyond Unlimited mean? It means you've taken something that doesn't have a limit and now there are even fewer limits. That this isn't, are we speaking English? Like, this doesn't even make sense. There's a business unlimited, and of course you can always go with a prepaid unlimited. I guess, you know, that one kind of makes sense. You pay in advance and then they just shut you off when you run out instead of billing you extra, I guess. I don't know. It's really crazy when we live in a day and age that you can just start changing the definitions of any given term. What about VPN rerouting? Does that help against network throttling? Johnny, my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that VPN rerouting will help because your ISP will not be aware of what it is, you know, what type of data is being transferred. However, a lot of VPNs come with the trade-off, you know, just because you're bouncing off a different source and you're rerouting things, so you're adding to the lag when it comes to transferring whatever, you know, whatever data it is that you're using. That's my understanding, and I'm certainly not an expert on that. And that's another person we should get on here, a network engineer maybe that could explain a little bit more about how that works to us. So let me back up in the comments here briefly because I think I missed a couple of things. I'll send you a PM. Okay, cool. Are they throttling for bandwidth reasons? Well, I'm sure that on occasions they are. However, when you throttle firefighters, as they did recently in Northern California, because they have exceeded their data limit and they are trying to figure out how to stop a forest fire, and the company says, well, instead of lifting your data limits, we need to get you in here to sign a new contract to figure out what data plan works best for you. You know, that's a little extreme. I'm sure that there are situations where they're throttling for bandwidth reasons, but here's the catch. If you're going to throttle a customer or a group of customers during a peak time, that makes sense. But when you start picking and choosing which content you're going to throttle, then clearly there's a problem, and there is a motivation there by that company to say you need to buy the services that we offer rather than buying the services that someone else offers. I'll give you an example. I have a cable company who says, yes, you can get Netflix, but you can also get our alternative for Netflix. And which one of those do you think that they're going to throttle first? Obviously, it's going to be the company that they have no investment in. You know, they don't stand to gain from giving Netflix the same speeds that their own streaming service has, because you don't pay $11 a month to them for Netflix. You pay that directly to the company that's streaming the content. So there's certainly a problem when they start picking and choosing. You know, if you just want to say we're throttling for bandwidth, period, I totally understand. You know, there are peak times. We're used to that. That's how the internet works. But to say that we own this, so it's not going to be throttled, you know, and they have something called zero rating, where they say if we provide a streaming service, it's unlimited, but with the other services that you use, there's a cap on that. This can lead to a lot of problems, because it allows them to control the information that people have access to. And in the worst case scenario, it becomes a form of censorship in most cases. That is my prediction. So, my carrier doesn't know that throttling exists, and even said the buffering is because of the network, even though I tell them my network gets 80 megabits per second in an area but can't watch a 1080p video. Yeah, and I'm not sure you'll get a good answer in many cases, although I wish they would do like the teller at my bank did last week. I went to get change, and I said, you know, how come you guys don't have two-factor authentication for your online banking? And he said, look, between us, banks are going to do what the law tells them they have to. That's the bottom line. And that's most large corporations. I would suspect ISPs included. They are going to do what they are required to do by law, or, you know, anything that would result in them losing a large amount of customers, they might change their tune then. But, you know, if they do it gradually enough, nobody's really going to notice exactly what's going to happen. They're just going to say the same way you do with your phone. My phone's starting to run slower and slower and slower. Well, I just need to buy a new phone. Well, maybe they don't need to push updates to your phone if it's not designed for that specific model. Maybe if you have a flagship phone and you release an update or a firmware for that phone, you shouldn't support that firmware on phones that are 2 or 3 years old and don't have the capability of handling, or don't have the resources that they need to run that operating system, right? I mean, that would be one way to approach it. Just an idea. They're not going to listen to me. They never do. Okay, so let me not get too far behind. I got a couple more here to go over real quick. Obviously, big thing, we have the Pixel 3. Officially, invitations have been sent out by Google for the October 9th event in New York City. There's not a lot more to this article than that, but it does say that it's confirming a previous report from Bloomberg and discrediting a previous rumor for October 4th. The presentation set to take place at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and there will be a live stream made by the Google channel. One thing that they did say is that they don't expect to see... hold on, let me not get ahead of myself here. Let's go to the next article, because there's a little more information about this here. As far as what we're expecting from the Pixel 3, which sounds like a pretty cool phone, right off the bat, everyone pointed out, it's going to have the biggest notch ever. So, you know, like it or not, big notch, relatively significant chin on the bottom, but this is because we have two front-facing stereo speakers, so they have to go somewhere. Obviously, at this point, not going with that technology where you can transmit sound through a piece of glass, which I don't think would be a great idea for stereo speakers. You know, maybe for an earpiece, but it sounds like it would be a big challenge to get good stereo sound out of the front of a phone if the thing's entirely covered in glass. I don't know. There may be some new technology that makes that available in the near future. So, what is the Google Pixel 3? Well, we know what that is. It's a pure Android flagship phone from Google, likely to cost somewhere around $650 or more. And we're expecting the launch, as I stated earlier, October 9th rather than October 4th, which is what this article said. I think it's a little older than the one that I read more recently. Design leaks have been out for a while. Again, we have some pictures here with that big notch in the middle, which, okay, you know, if you don't want to just go all the way across the top of the screen with the bezel, put the notch in. But as was pointed out recently, you know, more opportunities for people in the phone repair business, because these screens have much more surface area that's close to the edge of the frame. So they're going to be more likely to break when they land face down. So that's just the thing. 5.4-inch screen and dimensions of what? 1 45.6 by 68.2 by 7.9 millimeters. Why do you give me standard and then convert to millimeters? I don't understand. Let's go with one or the other. So of course we have some images here for screen protectors, or maybe this is the lens of the phone. That's kind of showing what it's going to look like. As far as the cameras, this is kind of interesting. It is going to have a super selfies feature with variable aperture on the selfie camera is my understanding. One will have an f1.8 and the other will be the dual aperture with either f1.8 and f2.2. So that's kind of interesting. On top of that, we are expecting it to have a single camera on the back, which is a little definitely unexpected now that everyone's going to dual cameras on the back. As far as the specs go, what are we looking at? The Pixel 3, and we assume the Pixel 3 XL, and we assume the Pixel 3 will have matching specs and reportedly use an octa-core Qualcomm chipset. Almost certainly Snapdragon 845, which is interesting because it seems like Snapdragon 845 has been out for a while, right? An Adreno 630 GPU and use 4 gigs of memory, according to unconfirmed benchmark leaks. If you've heard something different, let me know. This is just what I'm reading as of today. Elsewhere, there's talk of a 5.5 1080 by 2160 screen with an 18:9 aspect ratio and 440 pixels per inch. I would assume that's per square inch. The same source claims the battery is 2,950 milliamps, which is not huge. And again, same thing with Android phones for the most part when we compare them to iPhones, is that nobody's really come up with a great battery yet. But for the time being, at least, one of the areas where Android has, in many cases, outperformed Apple, and that is its ability to charge rapidly. And this seems to be one of the reasons they're saying, at least, that Apple will most likely be going to USB-C, which is supposed to give them a faster charging capability. Smaller bezels, but still there for sure. Customizable active edge. The Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL let you squeeze the sides to launch Google Assistant. It's a handy feature, but that's not all it does, and it can't be remapped for the Pixel 3. We want the feature to return. Someone does. I don't know. At least the person who wrote this article does. But we want it to be context sensitive. So, for example, if using the camera app, it would be used to take a photo. Makes sense. And for the core functionality to be customizable so that you can use it as a shortcut to whatever app or feature you want. That also makes a lot of sense. Camera app improvements, return of a headphone jack. Let's see. I think this is his wish list for the most part, the rest of this stuff here. Better water resistance. I guess if you want to take your phone swimming, don't do it. Oh man, I've been looking at some ugly water damage phones lately that are supposed to be water resistant, and it's just not a good idea, people. I wish you'd stop. I like to fix phones. I don't love working on wet phones, I gotta admit. It's not my favorite. Let's see. Comments. Where are we? Turbo VPN. Real World, why don't you reserve a spot with Mike's special stream on September 20th? You are absolutely welcome to. This is going to be a fun stream. Real World would be probably a great guest for this one as well. I think you and... but I want Nate to do his thing too, so I don't know. Let's see. We'll talk about that one. We can definitely do another live stream with Real World. We are definitely going to be doing more conspiracy theory stuff because there's so much misinformation out there, and at the very least, we should be free to discuss it. So if you're interested, let me know about that one. Apple sizes in Metric 2, yeah. I should be able to come on September 20th, but work closes at 6 with the live stream, but I'm fine with dropping my light. Okay, well, we'll talk about that. Let me check with Nate and see. I think it's going to be a lot of information in one to squeeze into 1 hour because there's a lot to talk about, but we definitely should have you at some point because I want to continue doing this for sure. Hey, what's going on, Harvey? Good to see you. This live stream must be the only one in all YouTube that got more participants who are YouTubers than the regular audience. That is a good point, and I like that. Hey, I like having YouTube creators on here. That's awesome. We all have a something in common, right? All right, so I wanted to get to this and kind of transition into, towards the end of the stream to talk more about these live streams and what I'm hoping to do with this Thursday night thing. Alex Jones banned from Twitter for good. So if you haven't watched the news, Alex Jones, who is the main guy behind InfoWars, which really is a conspiracy what would you call it, a conspiracy theory based organization or website or whatever, however you choose to address it. Interesting thing about Alex Jones is that he has exposed some real conspiracies. So like a lot of other news sources out there, some of the things that he has brought into light are the real deal. You know, they really happen, and people were amazed and surprised and just blown away by the fact that a lot of the things that are going on we don't get to hear about until someone brings them out into public. So he did that, and then I suspect that he started to realize that in order to continue to grow his audience and to maintain his level of popularity, he had to continue to come up with more content that was similar to what he had spoken about earlier. So if you look at his website and his stories, and if you've been following him for a while, you'll find that at a certain point he started to propose some outrageous ideas, which I am not opposed to. I strongly believe that anyone in the world, you know, and we certainly are supposed to be protected in the U.S. by the Constitution, everyone should be able to express their ideas. If you're not threatening someone, and if you're not inciting a riot, and you're not spreading hate speech, you know, really, if you want to tell me that there are flying unicorns and leprechauns living in your backyard, you should be able to say that. You know, no one should be able to tell you you're not allowed to say that. You know, I think is a bad idea, and it leads to a dangerous, you know, throughout history it has caused a lot of serious problems, and this is why we feel so passionately about free speech in America. At the same time, people kind of misinterpret that. You know, if you listen to some people and they say, well, you know, I should be able to do free speech on this TV show that I work on. No, when you're on the job, that's a different story. You're not entitled to the same rights when someone is paying you to do something. So there are some borders there, right? But, you know, using a social media platform to spread or to disseminate information has, for all practical purposes, become the new town square. You know, we don't go to the corner with the megaphone in public and stand on a literal soapbox to talk about things to get people to hear us. We go to the internet. We go to Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and we go to all these different outlets where we can talk to large groups of people. And it gets very sketchy when these organizations start saying, well, we're banning this person, we're banning that person. And it gets to a point where, you know, in many cases we create echo chambers where everyone has to think the same way in order to be a member or to be a participant on that platform. And that's unfortunate. And at this point in time, you know, if you looked at it, and this is another good question, I think, for our legal expert, if you look at it from a legal standpoint, I would assume that a private company can pretty much do anything that they want to. You know, if Facebook wants to say, we don't want this group of people here, and they're privately owned, then it is probably within their rights to say that they're going to kick you off their platform, and same with Twitter and YouTube and everything else. And at the same time, I believe that we have to question whether or not that is okay. Is it all right for any social media, especially, you know, a company with, well, I should say formerly, a company with formerly as much reach as Facebook and, you know, currently with Twitter and with YouTube, is it going to continue to be okay for them to pick and choose who is allowed to have a voice? Because if they don't, then it's going to become another situation like what we have with mainstream media right now, where advertisers get to decide what you're exposed to. Advertisers get to decide your opinions for you because they control the media in a way where, and again, this kind of goes along with the whole net neutrality issue. You know, if you have a company who says we're spending advertising money, and these guys don't agree with us, so throttle them so nobody really enjoys watching their content anymore and has to turn to us. And now we get to tell you what's in our best interest for you to talk about. You know, if you've ever watched a TV show and they won't mention a brand name, you know, one of the reasons obviously is because the competing brands don't want to spend advertising dollars if another brand is getting free exposure, which kind of makes sense, right? But if you start telling people, well, you're not allowed to say anything bad about this particular brand, And if everyone does the same thing, then there's a lot of information that's being withheld, and it really shouldn't be. So this is the reason why, as much as I think that Alex Jones is a kook, or he's one of two things. He's either lost his mind, or as he stated in a court appearance, he does his show for entertainment purposes. He is a performer. All of these crazy ideas that he talks about are not necessarily things that he believes in, but he understands that that's what his audience wants to hear. And obviously he's got some legal problems now. That is a whole separate issue. You know, if you're concealing evidence, then you are in trouble, and you're going to be tried by a jury and probably fined or sentenced or whatever that ends up being. You know, that is what it is. And the fact that he came out and said some terrible things, about denying the whole Sandy Hook situation is in poor taste. You know, it's definitely not a wise thing to say. And I don't support those statements in any way. At the same time, to ban someone completely and just say, you know what, we don't like what you're saying in general, we don't want you here anymore, on something as big as Twitter, on something as big as Facebook, something as big as YouTube, I believe that this leads to much worse things in the future. So for that reason, this is one of the topics that at some point I really want to tackle with an entire hour of live streaming and talk to you guys and gals, or guys and girls, or people. I need to stop using these terms. When I say guy, I mean people. Sorry, the two are interchangeable for me. I don't associate any gender or gender identity when I say guys. I call the females in my lives and the men in my lives hey guys. It's just a term. Don't want any confusion there. Don't want to get in trouble for that one. Let me get back to the comments real quick, and then we'll continue to wrap this up because we're running out of time. Snowden wannabe. What? Oh, same as I was watching some people create videos arguing that space technology is all a hoax. It's funny, Johnny, because we are considering the fake moon landings as something that Nate and I might be discussing just for fun. But yeah, it's interesting. One thing is free expression of ideas. The other is attacking individuals or groups with such ideas. And I agree, Johnny. We certainly, I'm opposed to hate speech, and I think that we need to make sure that people aren't saying, hey, go out and do bad things to this group of people. We have to stop that. And at the same time, if someone says, I don't particularly like this that's happening, or that's going on, or I feel this way about guns or free speech, or whatever it happens to be, we certainly should allow them to say what they think. But no, I'm with you on that. We need to prevent people from being attacked. Off topic. It is so crazy that people have these thoughts that are outrageous to lots of people, but at the same time, it is weird that we can get large groups of people who agree on the same thing, whether it's right or wrong. Yeah. Alex is in the center of information warfare. Yeah, I think Alex went a little further than he should have, and he probably realizes that now. And I don't suspect that he's crazy. I think that he really understands that he's created a platform where he needs sensational, just outrageous things to talk about to get people to continue to listen to him. And there are a lot of crazy people out there who really believe in the more outrageous things that he's saying. Off topic. For example, blaming the victim in one situation, but then blaming the offender in another, and our opinion on who to blame is swayed by friends and family. And unfortunately, that's a good point. I don't know if you saw in one of my recent intros, I included a term which I'm going to always forget the name of for some reason. I need to put a post-it on here for. But there's actually a psychological term for that where people will victim blame. And the short answer seems to be that we have a lot going on in our lives and in our minds, and victim blaming is a shortcut to thinking. So rather than looking at a situation and saying, why is this person being harmed? Why are people doing bad things to this person? It's much easier and it's much lazier to just say, well, if something bad is happening to them, they must deserve it. That is a lazy way of thinking. And it's a cop-out. It's an easy way to just dismiss evidence, to not have to do any work, to not have to take any extra steps, not to get up out of your chair and do something about it or change the way that you think. You can simply write something off by saying, oh, well, if somebody's in a bad situation, it's their fault. And it happens way too often, and it's really sad. But, if we don't talk about this, that's not going to change. And that's another good topic there, real world. We should bring this out into light, and people need to understand what's going on in the world. You can't just look at someone and say, hey, if you're suffering, that's your fault. Because maybe once in a while that happens, but for the most part, nobody really wants to suffer. So to look at someone and say, hey, you brought this on yourself, in many cases, sometimes that is true. People commit crimes. They willfully do things that they shouldn't. But in many cases, they start out in a situation that they don't have control over, and it's perpetuated by the way that people like, you're talking about look at things. Oh, you're homeless? Well, you must want to be homeless, right? Well, maybe there are some people out there who want to be homeless, but I'm sure that there are quite a few more who didn't choose to be in that situation. And it's really sad that people just write it off and say, yeah, it's all your fault. That's one of my pet peeves. The other one is the excuse of, well, that's the way it's always been. I really hate that statement. You look at something and you go, hey, I don't agree with this. And another person says, well, I do, because that's the way it's always been. Really? Another excuse to not think. Another excuse not to put any effort into making change, and to simply turn around and go back to what you're doing and worry about yourself and not do anything about it. It's sad. I'm going to get on a roll here, so I'm going to stop myself there. A coin will always have two sides, but the same value. Unfortunately, a lot of real-world issue just get treated by a flip of a coin. Hey, real world, you should do real world something else. That's a great name. Real world. I don't know. Add something on the end there beyond reviews, and it would work for these topics that you're bringing up. With this said, when someone breaks their phone, we end up blaming them rather than blaming the company that makes it. However, with the touch disease, we blame Apple. Well, yes, I suppose. I think the thing with touch disease was that Apple realized at some point that they manufactured a phone that was less durable than people expected it to be. Is it Apple's fault? Maybe not. But to deny that the phones were prone to being bent and you would end up with problems like touch disease, I think that was the part that they probably should have taken responsibility for and just said, look, you need a case for this phone. We tried to make it lightweight. It's not as durable as the previous model, and next year we're going to improve it. Instead they said, no, touch disease, that wasn't us. We didn't do it. You must have mistreated the phone. You must have put it in your back pocket and sat down on it. I think there's a little truth on both sides there. Just my opinion, of course. With this, where were we? That's why I picked the name, so I can review the world. That is perfect. You really should do real world review. That's brilliant. Start reviewing situations that the world's going through. Just like Louis Rossmann, he blamed equally his customers for choosing Apple as well as Apple themselves. Yeah, I think that when it comes to a broken phone, it's probably not any one person's fault, right? I mean, if you manufacture something defective like an iPhone 8 that has problems with the Wi-Fi, the processor, and the memory, that's on you, right? That is 100% on Apple, and it should be as easy as possible for the customer to remedy that situation. If you have a phone that's lightweight and prone to being bent, some people are tougher on their phones than others, and people have grown to expect phones to have a certain level of durability. But yeah, I don't think that's 100% on Apple. And was anybody complaining that the iPhone 5S was too heavy and that's why they had to take the reinforcement out of the frame on the iPhone 6? Well, I doubt it. I mean, it's a completely different form factor. They went to a larger phone and they said, we need this phone to be lightweight, and they decided not to, to really give it a durability test. It seems like that would be an easy thing to do, right? I mean, it would be primitive. You could take the phone and say, how hard is it to bend this phone before you release it from the factory? You don't need any high-tech equipment to do that. But Apple seems to have reached a point where whatever they do, people are going to love it. It doesn't matter whether it benefits the customer or not. So we'll see. I have many controversial ideas. Now I'll probably go viral but get into trouble. Yeah, you got to watch that. YouTube's kind of funny about those things. But I think that from our previous conversations, we could certainly have a discussion about many debatable issues, and it would be entertaining, I hope. We are talking about the same company that came out with a 12-inch MacBook without a fan. Ooh. Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. I hope that you'll come back, when time permits. I'm here on Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Thursdays, except on the 20th of this month when we will be doing a live stream with Nate from Nate's Tech Services and talking about something completely off topic that I think you're going to enjoy. If you're into conspiracy theories and that kind of thing, I hope that you can join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. I am certainly looking forward to it, and I will let you know as soon as I find out when we're going to have our lawyer come on and talk about, what would you call it, legal tech, I guess would be the right term? I don't know. Anyways, have a great weekend, and I will see you soon.